Hey, it's Doris with All the Books, and I am here with my that's the backside, with my Bout of Books wrap up. I meant to do this earlier in the week, but I got distracted and lazy. So here I am now, going to jump right in, and I forgot to reverse the order. So pulling from the bottom, I had a highly successful Bout of Books. I was very pleased. I had 7 books on my TBR, which I don't think has ever happened, but I always attempt it because then I usually do well. So I finished 5 books, which I'm always highly pleased if I finish 5 books in a week, and a little teeny bit of a 6th. So really good week. Anyway, this first book is one that I finished prior to Bout of Books. This is my very first read of January, and I was careful this year and picked out a book that I wanted to start my January with. I've seen people on BookTube talk about that, and I thought, let's do it. And it was a perfect read for the 1st of January. I meant to do its own review video, but I'm just not getting around to that. I don't like to do review videos. But anyway, Michelle Obama's Becoming, this book, it just gave me all the feels and all the thoughts. I loved it so very much. The first chapter just made me tear up. She talks about, you know, being out on their own for the first time in, you know, over 8 years and what that felt like, and reflecting on the recent events, and it was just what I needed to read, and it was just very cathartic to read this book, and very hopeful. I felt very hopeful reading it. The other thing that resonated with me was being a woman, and, you know, being a young woman and finding your way in the world, meeting the love of her life, having children, having a career, all the above, maintaining her own identity and growing and maturing and becoming. I just love this book, and it just touched me emotionally, chapter after chapter after chapter after chapter. I mean, things that you wouldn't even think about being emotional. She mentions the Secret Service agents that protect her and her family, and I cried with that. I mean, it's just, I love this book, truly. Okay, and then the next one that I finished was the one that was not on my Bout of Books TBR. This was one that I was trying to finish at the end of 2018 and didn't quite make it, and that is Nella Larsen's Quicksand. This one is one of the Harlem Renaissance novels that I was interested in reading and found at the used bookstore and was eager to get started. I really enjoyed the process of reading this. The book itself was, I feel like my reading experience echoed this woman's life. She was born during the time of the prior to the Harlem Renaissance. The book itself is set mostly during the Harlem Renaissance, but her mother was from Scandinavia, Denmark, and her dad was from the South, a black man, no, Chicago, I believe. So the book is centered around her struggle of never feeling like she fits in anywhere. So the author portrays that through, for such a little novel, it just leaps around all over the world. She starts out, I believe it was Chicago, but the book opens in the South. She's teaching at a well-to-do African-American high school, and it opens up and you're like, oh, I love this, it's so good. And then after she's there a year, she becomes disillusioned, and that was super interesting. But then she goes back to Chicago, and then back to, she moves to New York and Harlem, and then she goes to Denmark and all these places. I'll stop there. I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but she repeats the same process of just diving right in, and this is the answer, and then she becomes disillusioned and moves on again. And that really sets up her, you know, not fitting in anywhere and her struggles in life. I think that I would have appreciated that aspect a little more if she had expressed more thoughts on that process. It's just like it happens, but she doesn't spend a great deal of time mentally discussing it with herself, so she never progresses in life. And you know, that may be part of the message of the book. But yeah, I had the same reaction. I would read, you know, a third of it and, oh, I love this book. And then I would, you know, maybe I don't like this book. And then something else would happen. Oh, I love this book. But it was a great read for that. I was into the up and downs of it, I guess. Then my Bout of Books TBR was focused on my January Japanese and Korean literature. The first one, however, was not quite that. Fortune Smiles by Adam Johnson. This was not a typical Doris book. It's not a book that I would naturally gravitated towards because it's a lot of contemporary edginess. I grabbed it because this is the author of The Orphan Master's Son that I read a couple years ago and thought was tremendous. Great book. So this is a short story collection, and even though it wasn't my typical book that I love, I just can't help but saying this writing is absolutely brilliant. He is a great author and really controls the short story setting. There are, I believe, 6 stories in here, and each one of them is so different. The first one, Nirvana, it's one of those that feels contemporary but is slightly futuristic. So it's about a married couple that the wife has gotten an autoimmune disease and has lost mobility from the neck down. So, and then Hurricanes Anonymous is the second one. That one's set after Katrina. I really love that one. Interesting facts. I don't want to spoil anything. That one requires you to not know what's going on. George Orwell was a friend of mine. That one I think was the one set in Germany after the wall came down. He's just so creative with researching a situation and writing it creatively. Dark Meadow, that one was about child pornography, and it's not written in a graphic way, but it's very psychologically triggering. I would be careful with that one. And then Fortune Smiles was the reason I picked this up for the Korea, Japan aspect, because that one was set in South Korea with 2 people that have escaped North Korea, and really effectively talks about how hard it is to leave home, even though home isn't necessarily a great place to live. So this is just extremely, extremely well written. So if this type of book and any of those interested you, I'd highly recommend it. It's really well written. And then I finished All You Can Ever Know by Nicole Chung. This is a Korean girl who was adopted by a white couple from Oregon, and it just talks about what it was like for her to grow up with nobody else like her in her community at all, until she went off to college even, and what it was like to wonder who you really were from your heritage and finding those people and getting to know them. The ending of this was just beautiful. I teared up, obviously. I do that sometimes. I really enjoyed reading this. The only thing, it's really short. It's like 220 pages. And I felt like there were several spots in the first half that were, they felt a bit repetitious to me and could have been edited out, but I think they didn't want to edit out too much because it was already quite short, so I don't know, but really enjoyed reading that. And then the next one, Ruth Benedict, The Chrysanthemum and the Sword, Patterns of Japanese Culture. This was really a really good read. This is looking at Japanese culture, so not a history book. This is cultural anthropology, and looking at the mindset from the 7th century to World War II in Japan. And the author, Ruth Benedict, was a prominent cultural anthropologist at the time, and was actually, I guess, commissioned by the US government maybe to look into the Japanese and for the war. Yes, so this was really, really interesting, and I know things certainly have changed now. This was actually published in 1946, but it's a nonfiction book that I would say stands the test of time. I know they don't all do that, but this one really, I feel like it does, just because of the nature of the topic that it's written about. And I think if you want to read much Japanese fiction, literature, this would be a great place to start, because it really puts you in the mindset of getting more out of the Japanese literature. It really has for me. And I actually was turned on to this through Japanese literature. I read The Devil in Nanking last year, and this was a book that author had read and recommended. So yeah, this was a really great read for me. And then I finished My Year of Meats by Ruth Ozeki. This one, I read A Tale for the Time Being of hers last year and really enjoyed it. And I think I even enjoyed this one more. Yeah, this is her debut too, I believe. But this one is, the main character is, again, half Japanese and half white American. And she's so quirky and interesting and such an individual. I loved her so much. Her life was so interesting. This story follows almost a dual timeline, in that there's another main character who is a Japanese housewife. This story really looks at just all aspects of the meat industry, environmental and pharmaceutical, etc. And it's actually a documentarian who is commissioned by a prominent meat industry to make these reality shows, and how it goes off from there. This was so good. And I actually listened to this on audio, and it was a really good audiobook as well. So it was a really good reading week. And then I finished it up with this little gem, Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata. This one is a translated work, and really, really good translation. I love the writing in this. It's set around this woman who doesn't quite fit into society and knows that she doesn't fit in, and she has to study the way other people act in order to pseudo fit in, but she never quite does. She can't handle the college scene, and it was disappointment to her parents, and ends up working her whole life in a convenience store. From 18, I think she's 36 when this book opens, and it is quirky. I don't know what I felt or thought about the ending, the book, when I was finished, but I really enjoyed reading it. It was entertaining and interesting and thought-provoking. So yeah, really good reading week that was. So this week's been a little slower, but I'm getting there. So anyway, thanks so much for watching, and I will be back soon. Bye.